I'm Damien Jones from H&H, and welcome to a brief walkthrough of the nearly 90 cars we've got going under the hammer here at the Pavilion Gardens, Buxton tomorrow from 1 p.m. Start here, we've got a beautifully restored Triumph TR6. There are two TR6s in the auction. We'll come on to the other one, and the other one is very much a before, with this being the after, what they can look like if you put an awful lot of hard work and money into them. This one's been very subtly upgraded, so it's got the far more comfortable seats in it from a Mazda MX-5, gone through stem to stern, so a beautifully restored car. As is this 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. This is from the first year of Stingray C2 production. It's got the desirable 4-speed gearbox. It was restored by a leading member of the Corvette Club UK, a former trophy winner. It's got the optional Stinger hood. So it's got a small block Chevy engine in it, so a very lively performer in beautiful condition. Behind it, we've got Triumph Stag. Now this is unusual because it's been in two families from new. It's also in saffron yellow, which if you're a Bond fan, you may well remember from the Diamonds Are Forever film, with Sean Connery masquerading as Peter Franks on his way to Amsterdam. It's done 33,000 miles from new. It's had an awful lot of refurbishment. It is as clean underneath as it is on top, and it's a belter of a car. Beside it is a Jaguar E-Type Series 2 2+2. Now, traditionally, the 2+2 variant is less loved than the two-seater fixed head. But using the adage of buying the best one you can afford, this one is very much worthy of consideration because, again, like the TR6, like the Corvette, like the Stag, it's been very extensively restored and gone through. It, again, has got the preferred 4-speed manual gearbox. You've got that wonderful creamy smooth 4.2-litre straight-six engine. It's on wire wheels. It's got room for the kids. It's got a lot to recommend it. This, unfortunately, isn't a genuine SS100, but it's the next best thing. It's one of the Suffolk evocations. So this is beautifully wrought, very, very dimensionally accurate. This is a more modern build. It's been correctly registered as a Suffolk, which is a definite plus point. It's very nicely detailed. The correct little SS insignia on the windscreen surrounds, on Blockley tyres, just a glorious, glorious thing. And approximately a genuine SS100 3.5 litre would be £400,000 plus. This is yours for between 48 and 55. So good value from that point of view. I couldn't tell the difference if it drove past me. We have, if you like value, a 1928 Lagonda 1460. This is the forerunner of the 2-litre. This is the car which it's got the Arthur Davidson designed 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. They are much underrated. This one is at no reserve. We've had it running. It's a nice older restoration. So in terms of a great value entry to vintage motoring with a lot of style about it, that Lagonda has much to recommend it. Next to it, we've got a Mclaughlin Buick. So Mclaughlin Buicks were Canadian-built Buicks, which is why it's right-hand drive. This car has been in the UK pretty much all its life. And again, it's a nice older restoration. It's quite a sporty looking thing. If you look down the side of it, it's real, got some nice jazzy lines to it. Next to that, we've got a Bentley R-Type Special. Now that's one man's vision of his ultimate special. So it's got a tail on it that's reminiscent of something like a Bugatti Type 35, that little boat tail, very stripped down. Great performance from the 4.5 litre straight six. Just a very muscular, purposeful looking thing that has just been handcrafted. I mean, it sits on a bespoke chassis. It's, I can't begin to think the number of hours that went into that. Next to it is a Rolls-Royce 2025 that was rebodied in the 30s by the Southern Motor Company. Now, it wasn't unusual for people to want to modernize their Rolls-Royce. So they were such expensive cars in period, you know, they really were big house money, that after a few years, because the chassis typically didn't wear, the running gear was very strong, people would often have them rebodied. And the Southern Motor Company was very good at this. So this has much more rakish lines that would originally have worn. It's got a real swoop to it. And a contrast to the 20 horsepower that sit next to it, that has got a much more conventional, if you like, sit up and beg look to it. It's got its headlamps down. In the days before the dipping mechanism being integral with headlight function, there was a lever patented by the coach builder Barker, and you could dip and undip your headlights like that. Next to it is a Bentley 4.25 litre Tourer. Now this car has had something like £110,000 lavished on it with Glenn Glindrod. So a huge amount of mechanical work put into it. It was formerly the property of the Right Honourable Alan Clark MP. Very, very outspoken gentleman, but you can't doubt his passion for cars. Next to that, from two cars from a private collection, so the 20 horsepower and this 2530 Launderette. Very, very nice things. The owner is fastidious about his cars, and they are both very much jump in it and drive. So unusually nice examples. If you look at the way the doors fit, that one's open, but they've just got a nice quality feel about them, and they're typically not worth restoring to that condition. So it's nice to see one like that. Next to it, again, a 2530 Hooper Limousine. That's from a different stable, but it's seen use as a wedding car. So again, in terms of mechanical bits and pieces, very much up and together. This is the 20 horsepower that I mentioned earlier. Again, Sedanca DeVille, so an unusual and expensive body style. It's got the Stefan Grebel headlights, which were expensive in period, French lamps, matching side lights. So again, very, very nicely detailed, nice thing to drive. And next to it, a Silver Wraith from the same stable as the black and cream 2530. Again, mechanically a well-sorted car that's been in regular usage. And then we come to the star of the show, the 1967 Shelby GT500 Fastback. Now this is a particularly desirable example because it's finished in night mist blue. It's got the 4-speed manual gearbox, some of them were auto, and it's got the inboard driving lights at the front. Now for me, it's extra cool because Elektra Records gave Jim Morrison of the Doors a GT500. And he took one of his songs a little too literally. So that whole, come on baby, light my fire, time to set the night on fire, he took literally. He crashed his night mist GT500 on Sunset Boulevard and then went to drown his sorrows even at the Whiskey A Go-Go bar. This is not that car. It is another night mist blue GT500. It was bought new by a naval officer in the States. It's got a well-documented history. It comes with a Marty Deluxe report to confirm its origins. It's well known to the Shelby registry, and it had, between 2005 and 2008, a very, very extensive bare metal restoration by Alan Faulkner Stevens of Dragon Wheels Muscle Car Restorations, who's been working on Shelbys for 45 years and has forgotten far more than I'll ever know about them. So that is a glorious thing. It's been in dry storage the last couple of years. We have had it running and driving, needs a tune, but it is a great thing. Massive history file with it. Very, very cool. And actually at 130 to 160, very, very competitively guided. So in terms of a blue chip car here, that certainly counts. Moving on to, we've got two cars here, the Continental R and the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow from the estate of the late Bernard King. Now, Bernard King was a very well-known author when it came to Rolls-Royce and Bentley motor cars. I think any auction house employee, certainly myself, has been very thankful over the years and can lose count of the number of times I've reached to the shelves for a Bernard King book to check the provenance of a vehicle we've been asked to consign. So very, very knowledgeable man, very, very methodical, very much honoured within the Rolls-Royce and Bentley fraternity, and a great loss, but his work is being carried on, so that's lovely. And I'm sure he would approve of the next car in the lineup, this Bentley Azure, which has covered less than 17,000 miles from new. So these were, again, very, very expensive, very luxurious. They are completely hand-built. So last of the crew-built, pre-VW ownership Bentley drop tops. Very, very stylish thing. You've got that turbocharged 6.75 litre V8 engine, so effortless power and speed, and just a magnificent car. Next to it, Bentley Arnage R. Now this one is unusual because it's believed to have been a motor show car. So pretty much every single available option that you could get on an Arnage has been ticked on that car. It really is ridiculous, the spec, to be frank. So, and it would take you a long time to read through it. It's got the two-tone paint, it's got a cocktail cabinet in there, it's got special wood trim, it's got special leather, it's got special pretty much everything. So it is a very, very luxurious car, and guide price at 25 to 30, a fraction of what it would have cost and a fraction of what it would have cost to spec to that level. Next, we have, for some people, the other star of the show, the 1960 Facel-Vega HK500. Now, these were a real statement piece. They came out in the 50s and they were a Grand Routier. Facel was a French manufacturer, so it was moving on from the ethos of the pre-war Bugattis, Delages, Delahaye's, a very luxurious, fast car. So this one with its Chrysler engine, 6.3-litre Chrysler engine, you know, in period they were 140-mile-an-hour car. You had to be an A-list celebrity or a racing driver or a captain of industry to afford one. They were seriously expensive. This one was first owned by a gentleman called William O'Shea. It was first registered as WO2. Now, Mr. O'Shea was the founder and owner of Magnatex, and Magnatex effectively supplied most of the British motor industry with bumpers, door mirrors, wing mirrors, wiper arms. You know, if it was made from metal, there was a chance that they'd supplied it. So that obviously is a restoration project, one of 98 believed to have been built in right-hand drive. It's been locked away in a garage in North Wales since 1976. The last MOT is from 1972. It's substantially complete. It's going to be an absolutely amazing thing when it's restored, but it certainly has a wow factor like that. It was on display at the NEC restoration show, and there was literally a crowd 5 deep around it on every single day. Next to it, we have a Ford Capri 2.8i Special. Now that's unusual because it's finished in Special Order Paris Blue. It's done 44,000 miles or thereabouts. It's recently had a £7,000 repaint. It's just a nice car. I think it's 2 or 3 former keepers. Good history with it. Just a sharp example of a Capri, and they are much loved. There are quite a few driving schools that use Capris because of their predictable, tail-happy behavior. It was just a lovely thing to drive. Next to it, another real rarity, a Fiat 124 Sport Coupe. I can't remember ever seeing one before. So, you know, again, pretty little thing, a little bit like a stretched Lancia Fulvia, proper 4-seater, engaging 1600 twin cam engine, probably a Aurelio Lampredi unit. Just great fun, rarity, in nice order, ready to go and turn heads at a classic car show. Next to that, we have a Ford Lotus Cortina, or a Forder would prefer a Ford Cortina Lotus because this is the Mark II version, and they felt that Lotus was getting too much credit. It is, again, a nicely restored car. You can see that all the way throughout. I won't ask Martin to put the camera underneath the car, but it is clean under there. Lovely interior, nicely detailed. And like for like, if that was a Mark I Lotus Cortina in that kind of condition, it would probably be twice as much money. So that's 28 to 32. Next to it, again, something which, given the amount of work that's gone into it, is great value, is this Mark II Jaguar. Now, this is a resto mod, if you like. So it has been upgraded throughout. So you have a 4.2-litre version of the XK straight-six engine. You have a more modern 4-speed automatic gearbox. You have uprated suspension. I believe it's independent at the rear. Even the battery's been moved to the boot for weight distribution. It's been retrimmed, repainted. That is just, it looks like a Mark II, but it will go and stop and steer much better than one. In terms of things which are better than their donors, this is another rarity, this Kougar Jaguar. This is one of the earliest examples known, and this effectively took Jaguar saloon running gear, dropped it into a 2-seater lightweight roadster body, and just enormous fun. So these, again, have begun to come into their own. They do have a market. They are collectible. A little bit of fun with that proboscis of a nose, little bit kind of Fraser-Nash Sebring, that sort of thing. Sorry, Fraser-Nash Le Mans rep rather than a Sebring. So just a little bit of fun there, but rare, just great thing. It's a truly beautiful day here at Buxton, which is not always the case, which is also the reason why we tend to put marquees up to protect things from the elements. This particular marquee is full of sports cars and GT cars. So we start off, we've got 2 cars with a shared ancestry, Aston Martin DB7, and the Jaguar XK8 both owe their parentage to the Jaguar XJS going back in time. The DB7 is powered by a 3.2-litre straight-six supercharged engine, whereas the XK8, this is an XKR version, it's got the 4-litre supercharged V8 engine, so a little bit pokier. These are enormous value for money. If you want to do a Jeremy Clarkson power impression, but without getting yourself into trouble, then they're a great option to go down. That one's, I mean, they're both very nicely looked after examples. You can see that by the cars themselves or having looked through the history files. We've got a Maserati 4200 GT here. It's one of the desirable manual gearbox cars, and it's being offered for sale without reserve. So that's a huge amount of flash for the cash. Pretty car, nicely detailed interior. Engine has got Ferrari parentage, so unusual from that point of view. Not the cheapest thing to run, but, you know, a lovely thing. Cars which are more reasonable to run, you've got an MGB Roadster behind you. That particular car, actually, I think looks sharper in the metal than it does in the catalogue photos. It's got a bit more of a zap to that red about it. And I mean, again, just for something you can jump in and use, especially when the weather's lovely, that is affordable to run, easy parts availability, it's great. If you want to enjoy the sunshine at rather greater velocity, SL55 AMG. These are a well-established modern classic. I mean, they are phenomenally quick still by today's standards. This one is finished in a very unusual color, which extends to the interior as well. So I don't know if it's open, but we'll see if you can see. You've got the deep maroon leather, and yeah, I mean, just an awful lot of style there. The opposite, if you like, I mean, this is a large capacity 5.4 litre, 5.5 litre supercharged V8 engine, getting on for 400 brake horsepower, a real sledgehammer sports car. The opposite, a Lotus Elise. That's a 1.8 litre K-series, struggling to muster 120 brake horsepower, but in a car that weighs 700 kilos or thereabouts. This one has had one owner and done just 22,000 miles from new. And that owner, it's coming direct from them, spec'd it really to quite a good order. So it's got the leather seats, it's got various other extras about it. It's always been very well cared for and very well loved. So that's great. And they are increasingly collectible now, those Series 1s. Next to it, a Daimler Dart. That was Daimler's attempt to break into the American market. So unusual, you've got fiberglass bodywork. Not typical of a 50s or 60s English design. You've got the Edward Turner design 2.5 litre Hemi V8 engine, so they sound great, these, and make a wonderful alternative, something like an E-Type Roadster. Next to it, a Lotus XL. Again, that's no reserve, so it will make what it makes on the day. Unusual, and really the XLs and the Eclats have been picked up by the recent increase in prices of Esprits. There's been a lot more interest shown in them. So yes, that car needs a little bit of tidying, but it comes with a history file that my colleague Andreas insists is at least this deep. So, no, I mean, great history file. Next to it, this MGB GT, which again has a very nice history file. That traces all the owners all the way through and was treated a number of years ago to a complete bare metal restoration that was chronicled across 3 issues of Enjoying MG magazine. It's a notably late Mark I with that, to me, preferable interior. It's just very nice, and although it's an older restoration, it's been maintained very nicely to that sort of standard. It's weathered well. Next to it, you can't miss it, this BMW Z3, 2.2 litre straight-six engine. Again, for summer fun, great value. Towards the end here, we've got a Chevron B1 Mark II. Now, the B1 was the first ever Chevron car. Chevron was founded by Derek Bennett, and Derek Bennett at that point had been better known for building specials or race preparation, but one of the people that he worked with was Brian Classic, and Brian Classic actually commissioned him to build a Clubman's class sports racer, which was the B1. And Brian Classic agreed to fund the project, have two built. And the B1 and B2 are very closely related. And when Chevron Racing Cars Limited was restoring Bryan Classic's B2, they hit about the idea of why not do a modern update on the B1, hence the B1 Mark II. This particular car was road tested by Tony Dron, the late Tony Dron, later much missed Tony Dron, for the Telegraph. And they only ever built 2 of these, sadly, primarily because they were priced much, much closer to a Lotus Elise than a Caterham 7. So this would have been about £23,000 when new. Of the 2, the other cars in Sweden, it's not road registered. This is the sole road registered example. So if you want something that's different out there, that will cause a conversation, this is great. It's no reserve. It's got a Ford 1600 Rocam engine in it, so it's a very easy, cheap thing to replace, modify, tune, whatever. And welcome to Land Rover Alley. Over here, lot 13 is a Series 3 that's been nicely restored. It's on an unusual wheel and tyre combination, which really suits it. And funnily enough, the Land Rover specialist who did that conversion asked to feature it in various promotional materials afterwards. So you can see why. Next to it, we've got a Land Rover Defender. So you're switching from leaf to coil springs. This is a TDI that's entered without reserve. It's been driven to the auction and just a great usable machine. Unfortunately, the current vendor's not using it as much as he wants to, so just thinks he should just pass it on to a new owner, but that's MOT'd and a great entry. Again, quite a contrasting pair. We've got a Series 1 here, which, as you can see, is an older restoration, not done to concours condition. And across from it, a P38 generation Range Rover, but one of the Westminster limited editions, and again, offered without reserve. So a lot of imposing motor car for comparatively little money. Back to the better restored examples. That's a Series 2A. Now, for some people, the Series 2A is the toughest. That's the cockroach that would survive a nuclear war. For some people, that is the ultimate Land Rover in terms of the combination of styling, robustness, and whatnot. And making a big contrast next to that, we have a Range Rover, which the first owner sent to Overfinch, and, well, it was customised for the gunmaker Holland & Holland. So you have got a bespoke interior with Holland & Holland logo stitched into the seats. You've got a Holland & Holland plaque between the front seats. And in the back, you have, if I can figure it out, more Holland & Holland marquetry. And that's where your guns would have lived. You can see right down the end, there's a little cross frame. And in here, they've been removed, but you can still see the markers for your individual cut glass. So never quite been sure about the merits of combining alcohol with shooting, but I guess it makes the average pheasant survival rate that little bit higher. So that would have been a phenomenally expensive thing when new. It's very, very rare now. Still got amazing road presence, but available for a fraction of its original price. So that would have been, in most likelihood, a substantial six-figure car when new, now guided at 28 to 32,000. I believe it's done something like 60,000 miles. It's got the very long-lived, pokey V8 diesel in it, so no, a great thing. Here we have a Mercedes-Benz E500, which is based on the W124 chassis. What Mercedes did was they wanted to produce a high-performance Q car. So they engaged the services of Porsche, who were struggling at the time during the 90s and therefore that much more available for project work with other manufacturers. And they shoehorned the 5-litre V8 from the W126 S-Class into the 124 shell. So you've got a 5-litre V8 with over 300 brake horsepower. You can see they also subtly flared the arches to fit wider wheels and tyres. They uprated the suspension, uprated the brakes, but otherwise it was very much standard Mercedes luxury inside. No real clues internally, apart from the seats, that you're in a high-performance Q car. So very, very understated, and for us, all the better for it. These were a seriously quick car in period. They remain an impressive and enjoyable thing to use today. You've just got that, I just think it's class, you know, the understated appearance. They're just great, great things. This one spent most of its life in Japan. And in Japan, there is a status involved, although they are a right-hand drive market. Cars which are left-hand drive tend to be generally more sought after. So that's a solid example. And a Q car that really, given other trends in the market, I would expect to keep going up in value. Proof that better isn't always more valuable, and improvement and evolution aren't always good things. This Jaguar S-Type is a better car than a Mark II. It's got independent rear suspension. They've done tweaks to the chassis and things like that. It shares the same sort of visage as a Mark II, but they don't have the following. So these are like for like about half the price. This is a 3.8 manual overdrive car in lovely British racing green, suede green leather, older restoration, but holding up very nicely, in at 10 to 12,000. So great value for money. I mean, you'd struggle to buy a Mark II project for this kind of money. So an unsung hero, the S-Type. And as I say, proof that even when Jaguar improved the sophistication of the design, it didn't make, in retrospect, a more desirable machine. Here in the second marquee, we've got a good selection of vehicles, really everything from the 1920s to the 1980s. This is a 1928 Humber 920 Wayman fabric saloon. Now, Wayman was a French coach builder, and they patented a construction technique for enclosed coachwork and some open coachwork, where fabric was stretched across a wooden frame, which made the coachwork much lighter, so they tended to be more sporting. And the only downside was there was insulation between the fabric and the framing. Once that got damp, the bodies tended to rot off. So to find a vintage car with its original Wayman coachwork, albeit this has been restored at some stage, is unusual, because a lot of them were just cut down into Touras or specials or whatnot. And Humber, again, is one of those undervalued British marques. They were very, very nicely made cars. So that's got great appeal. And again, not particularly expensive at 9 to 11,000. Next to it, jumping to the 1940s, a Ford V8 Pilot. Now, Ford produced the first mass-produced V8 engine. I think it debuted in 1932. It was a flathead design. This has got a 3.6-litre version of the flathead V8. So although they were only about 85 brake horsepower, they've got a lot of torque, and they do romp along for a 1940s car. So this has got that typically bulbous styling, great fun, some transatlantic cues. Got to love the aeroplane mascot that also doubles up as the method of opening the bonnet. So just a lovely thing. Again, an older restoration, but a huge amount of character for the money. Same could be said of the Auntie Rover next to it. These P4s were known, I don't know whether it was a compliment or an insult, as the poor man's Rolls-Royce. But again, Rover, like Humber, much underrated manufacturer. These were very nicely made, very nicely detailed, and actually surprisingly good to drive. They're quite a boxy, staid design, but a nice bit of sophistication. Next to it, we've got a Morris Minor Traveller. Again, these are something of an evergreen. So many families have been touched by a Morris Minor in terms of ownership and experience and things like that. So good fun. This is the much promised other TR6. This is the before version. This is unusual because it's had one owner from new. Now, I can't say one careful owner, but you know, the car is complete. It's very, very original. It's got the makings there of a project, and it will be great for somebody to bring that back to life. Next to it, again, is a Stag. You can tell that's very original, signs of the original paint on it. Again, a total project, but something that's got to be worthwhile. I mean, there's a tax disc on there from 1986, which may well be the last time it was on the road. Next to that, we've got a Volvo 1800, P1800. Now, that's a rare machine. They didn't make that many P1800s anyway, but this is a Swedish-built cow horn example. Now, most of the cow horn cars were built by Jensen, but then with a few quality niggles, they took over production or assembly in Sweden, and they switched shortly thereafter to a more conventional, plainer, cheaper to make flat bumper design. So that is one of the last cow horn cars, Swedish built. As you can see, it's been seen usage as a historic rally car, has been running and driving recently, but a very worthwhile project. Probably the biggest project of them all is this Lagonda 2.6 saloon. This was, believe it or not, a very, very sophisticated car for its day. It had all-round independent suspension. It had inboard brakes. The engine was designed by Willie Watson and W.O. Bentley. The engine in this is one of the reasons that David Brown bought the Lagonda Mark and was later fitted to the DB2, the DB2-4, and influenced the engines fitted to the DB Mark III and all that sort of thing. So that's where a lot of it started. Frank Feely design, so an elegant looking thing, but you can see it comes with a wealth of parts, but a massive project. Much less of a project in that it's running and driving and MOT'd is this 205 GTI. It's the 1.6 litre version, which some people prefer because it's a little bit rivier and zingier and a little bit less awkward on the limit than its bigger sibling. Again, no reserve, so we're expecting plenty of interest. Ford Sierra XR4i. These get unfairly overshadowed by the Cosworths, but they were a great car in their day. That's a nicely looked after example. And then also this Volkswagen Scirocco Scala. Interest in the Mark I Sciroccos has certainly increased over the last few years. That's got its original interior, its original wheels. It is a project, but again, a very worthwhile one. Another one of the no reserve lots on offer is this 1989 Jaguar XJRS 5.3. Now, the XJRS was a joint project between Jaguar and Jaguar Sport, which was Tom Walkinshaw's company, and the company responsible for Jaguar winning Le Mans again in the late 80s. So they went through, they uprated the suspension, the brakes, the steering on these, they fitted them with the body kit, and they were a rare old thing. So that one's at no reserve. Next to it is a C-Class Mercedes. Now, that's not really our typical fare, but this particular example is here because it's covered 5,000 miles from new. So it really is a very, very sharp survivor and an unusual creature with that mileage. Next to it, we have a BMW 750i. Now, that's unusual because they only ever made 412 in right-hand drive, 299 of which were pre-facelift cars like that. This one was supplied new to BMW management, and then when it was 6 months old, sold to its only private keeper, who's kept it all these years. So it has been meticulously serviced. I mean, the last service was about 600 miles ago, and it was a thorough service in terms of suspension, brakes, all that sort of thing. It really was gone through. The car's worn its miles extremely well, and if you are of a certain age, the E38 7 Series is synonymous with James Bond, Tomorrow Never Dies. It's synonymous with Jason Statham and the Transporter films, or admittedly his was a manual, The Game, all sorts of 90s Hollywood blockbusters. So that's a particularly nice example. You wouldn't credit the odometer reading at just short of 120 given the condition of the car. I mean, the wheel arches are in lovely order, the wheels are in lovely order, the interior is in lovely order. Just great value and quite nostalgic. And we also have another Arnage. This one's a T, so the uprated version with a bit more horsepower and the distinctive quad facelift front. Again, diamond stitch leather interior, just sheer luxury and enormous value for money at that guide price. So I hope you've enjoyed that brief overview. We're on public view today, Tuesday the 25th, from 12 until 6, and then doors open tomorrow, sale day, at 9 o'clock, with the auction itself starting at 1 o'clock. You're welcome to bid either in person, please do come to Buxton, we'd love to see you, on the telephone or via our website. If you have any questions at all about any of the lots going under the hammer or anything to do with the bidding process, please do contact us on 01925 210 035 or via info@h&h.co.uk. Thank you very much.